on the session. Okay, just a minute. And I just want to welcome everybody to our 120 session. This session is with Kim Sparkman. She works at KEDC with the Deeper Learning and the CRISA team, which is what I am also a part of. So I am a lucky lady to get to work with a great team. But she is going to be presenting today how everyone needs a coach. And if you haven't already, put some words in the chat that kind of talks about your day. We've been reflecting on those and looking at those as she goes through her presentation today. And if you scroll back up through the chat at the end of the session, Brandy has posted the link to the evaluation that you can complete at the end of the session, or you can also find it on the P3 grid schedule at the bottom. So with that, I will turn it over to Kim to go on and get started.
Well, I am super thankful to be here and to present in front of a great group of educators. As I said when I started, I want you to learn a little bit about me, and I want to learn about you. I consider myself an education virtuoso because I've been doing this thing called education for about 30 years now. I'm going to talk. I'm an impact coach. I've had 2 years of cognitive coaching, but I'm really a proud parent of 2 kids, DJ and Chloe. I'm a lifelong learner, a long distance runner, a lover of music, and a Netflix junkie. If you can relate to any of those things, give me a thumbs up in the chat. So we're going to dive into our session. I want this to be really interactive. I want us to share out. Please stop me if you have a question, a comment, or a concern, because I want this session to be about you. And as we're here, I just want us to acknowledge that we're equals. Please stay curious with me. Work on being a really good listener because we want to meet you where you are and take you where you want to be. And I love that we want to remember that conversations is that natural way of human thinking. So please feel free to unmute and have conversations with me. So when we think about a coach, we think about basketball. And I have to mention one of my favorite coaches, John Wooten, and his quote, "Success comes from knowing that you did your best to become the best that you are capable of being." And you know, that's what instructional coaching is all about, is helping one to become the best they are at their capability of being. So I want you to think, as we kind of frame this session, could you put in the chat just things you want to get better at? Now, it can be things that is professionally realm, or it could be personal things you want to get better at. So just a few moments, I want to just use the chat and put, what are some things you want to get better at? Now, for me, I want to get better at organization. Well, Alicia, I'm going to join you swimming here in a couple of weeks because I'm starting that as well. We all need those personal goals and those professional goals to keep us moving forward. And how do we reach those personal and professional goals? Sometimes we need help. And that's what instructional coaching is. Coaching done well is the most effective intervention designed for human performance. We're going to hear some more from Otto as we go along. But I want you to soak that quote in. The most effective intervention designed for human performance. So when we think about training, or we think about moving students and we hear that word intervention, we think about it as getting better. And as teachers, we intervene in our students' lives and help them get better. But who helps us? That's what instructional coaching is all about. I want to tell you how valuable coaching is. And we're going to use some sports analogies. I hope we've got some sports fans out there. I know, being the parent of a son, you're a sports fan whether you want to or not. I want to think about Harvard and Yale. They're huge rivals. Their first game was played in 1775. And it was the beginning of this crazy sport called football. From that point, it was rugby. Well, Harvard won that game. But you know what? Harvard didn't beat Yale for another 11 years. You know why? Because Yale went out and got them a coach. And that intentionality of adding that coach to their team enabled them to beat Harvard 11 times in a row. And finally, Harvard got tired of losing and hired a coach. So that's what coaching can do. Coaching is booming right now. We hear it everywhere. There's life coach, behavior coaches. There's dating coaches. I'm thinking about getting my son one of those. No, I'm just kidding. But there's performance coaches, data coaches, all kinds of coaches. And what's coming into our school right now are literacy and math coaches. And those people are so valuable because those people can bring about the change that the Harvard coach brought you know. So if you really want to learn how to do something, find a coach to help you do it. An instructional coach, when we think of an instructional coach, that's not an extra hand on our staff to fill in or substitute or do this. It's a partner with the teacher to help us improve teaching and learning so our students become the success that they want them to be. Our first line of defense for a low achieving student is that teacher. So we have to give the teacher the support that they need to be able to effectively help our students. So that instructional coach, they're not an administrator, substitute, they're not a cover of classes. They are the architect of teaching and learning for our students. They're building the process that our new teachers need. I want to say this, some of our old teachers as well. So they're valuable. Again, I have to go back to another one of my favorite coaches, the Jimmy V here. A coach can make you better, and it's having that coaching relationship. Sometimes we don't see our teachers move because we've got that got you fearship instead of a relationship, and we don't want that. And when we think about one of the most inspiring people in sports, we think about this guy right here who never stopped fighting, Jim Valvano. And I'm going to let that quote just resonate with you for a minute. And I want you to think about how that relates to instructional coaching, because when we bring instructional coaches into our schools and we implement them well, then we become a part of something bigger. We are putting instruction and relationship to the forefront. Can't do a session without coaching with them. So when we think about our teachers and we think, well, now, you know what? We give staff development all the time, but I never see it implemented in the class. How many of you all have been there with me? Give me a yes if you've seen that happen. You've had the best presenters, staff development, we're ready to go, and then we go back, and it really doesn't happen in our classroom. I want you to see this. If we want them, if our staff just hears a presentation, the new behavior that they'll take back to the room is about 15%. If they see it and hear it, it's about 18%. If they see it, hear it, and practice it, it gets a little better to 85. But if they see it and hear it and practice it with a coach in a coaching cycle, it moves to 85%. Now that's just them demonstrating the new behavior. How does that transfer to the work site? We want it to go from, I know how to do this, I'm comfortable doing this, now let's do it. And here is the transfer. And I really want to pay to the hear it, see it practice. You would think, oh man, they've seen it, we've heard it, we've practiced it, we've had professional developments where they go and they do it during our sessions. But look, the likelihood of that transferring to the workplace is about 15%. And that comes from our student achievement development book, Student Achievement, from Bruce and Joyce Shower there at the bottom. It's where our research comes from. But look at what happens when we have a coach. When we have a coach and we hear the practice, we see the practice, we practice our new practice, and then we coach it. We have 90%. We have well beginnings, but well beginnings sometimes are only half done. If we want to complete our beginnings, we need to add a coach. So I want to stop and ask if you have any thoughts about that. A lot of our inspiration comes from Jim Knight in the instructional coaching process. He is the founder of the Impact Cycle. I will know he is at the forefront of instructional coaching, and here's some of his beliefs. As administrators, when we go into that classroom, we're not always seen as an equal. I mean, we're not always seen as that equal. So sometimes we can't have that equal partnership conversation because when we go in that classroom, it's evaluated. And when we have an instructional coach who goes in, that evaluation has taken off the table. So if we have that taken off the table, then we also have the scare factor of that in there. And even administrators with the best of intentions can sometimes have that gotcha feel. So instructional coaches are able to go in your classroom and say, and I want to take that, administrators can also be that instructional coach, but they have to incorporate these beliefs. They have to see each other as equals and have that conversation and not be judgmental. They want to hear what others have to say. And where we are losing so much of our teachers is having that autonomy and that back and forth conversation. And not only back and forth conversation, but having a conversation that's life-giving. I want you to think about the conversations you've had in the last couple of weeks with your staff, with your husband or spouse, and think, have those conversations been life-giving? And if they haven't been life-giving, have they been effective? The impact cycle wants us to look at identifying the problem, learning about it, and improving it. And an instructional coach helps us to do that. We wear a lot of hats as our administrators, and putting on the hat of a coach is probably one of the most important hats you'll put on as far as staff development, because we're a partnership with teachers. We analyze our current reality. We have a lot of data out there, but to be able to use that to see our reality clearly is something that we find hard, because we can have that data there and then we can say, well, it was because of this, and this. We have to really be able to look at our current reality, see reality clearer, set goals that are impactful, that are manageable, explain teaching strategies that we need to meet that goal, and provide that support. And number 4 is where the instructional coach is so valuable, because we can identify that problem and set that goal and even get that strategy. Here's what will work to help you meet your goal. But if I can't provide the support my teachers need, then the likelihood of that goal being met and that teaching strategy being implemented the way that will meet our students' needs is pretty low. Well, how do we get better? We get a coach. A coach helps us see what we cannot see. Gosh, that's hard. I want you to think about yourself. What is it that you think you cannot see? I think I have a clear picture of reality about myself, but I know there are things that I just cannot see that I need to do because we have a blind spot. And it doesn't matter how educated or self-aware or driven we are. There are just things that you can't see. And thankfully, just like that little light that comes on your car when there's another one by you that gets you in a blind spot that tells you, hey, it's not safe for you to change lanes. That instructional coach can be that person that clears your blind spot because they're coming in a non-evaluative form. And they're looking at a lesson and they're talking to you in a partnership manner, a life-giving conversation. A coach can be that mirror to where I can see myself clearly. And sometimes it's hard to see yourself clearly. Having those crucial conversations with with teachers is sometimes not life-giving because they don't see themselves clearly. We have to see our reality for what it is and then be able to move forward. And a coach can do that. Again, because it kind of takes that step out of that non-evaluative observation and non-evaluative work. Now, no one ever changed because you told them to. If they did, wouldn't the world be a better place? If they just come in, you're the observer, you say, oh, here's what you need to do. Give me a thumbs up if you've ever had a situation where you gave someone excellent advice that they didn't follow. Thumbs up. I'd love to hear from you. Because you know what? I bet we've all been in situations like that. I know I have. No one really changes until they see the need to change. Because I can remember my principal coming in early on in the day and it's an evaluative situation. They tell me, well, all you need to do is this right here. And I was like, oh no, they're crazy. And when they left the room, I never thought twice about that again because I didn't see the need to change. An instructional coach needs to have the skills to craft conversations to see the change in the person because we only change when we realize we need to change. So when a coach is that facilitator, it's that guide, it's that person who can create that plan, make that outcome, and get that thinking moving forward. Because if I am thrown in a room and just observed and not coached, then my thinking is going to stay where you at. You can tell me what I'm doing wrong, and give me a strategy to do it. But if there's not steps put in place to make sure that I'm doing that strategy correctly or that I am doing that strategy, the likelihood of it helping our students is slim, very slim. And helping our teachers, we want to be teachers. A coach is a facilitator. And that facilitator gets to ask really great questions and explore their answers. And some of the questions that they ask is this. So when I want my teachers to reflect back on what they've done for me, I need to put them in situations where they can reflect, really reflect. So I want you to look at the questions that we have here, and this is from the coaching cycle. Pick one of those questions you think would be the most, this is a question I want to start asking. So I'm going to give you just a few moments to look at those and just explore. What question can I ask to help move my teachers forward, to move me into that coaching room? And if you'd like to unmute and share some thoughts, we would love to have it. What question do you like? I'm going to tell you mine as you type. When I'm in a coaching session, I ask them all. But my favorite one is, what would you have to change to make this closer to a 10? Because when I ask that question, I feel like it puts them in that reflective mode as to, they may think their lesson is 9.5, but what's that one thing I could do to get it to a 10? I also like the question of, what would you like to see your students do? Because when we think about when we have those observations of what here I'm in this post-conference observation with my teacher. Do we think about what the students were doing and having that lens? And I agree. I like that. What would I like to see my students doing different? Because this brings about change. When I ask questions like this brings about change. This uncovers some of the reason for change that our teachers need. So I like that. I also like these. I like this one. What advice would you give another teacher in your situation? Because again, that allows them to look outside themselves and think, what would they tell us? What would they ask? What the questions we ask is what moves us forward. And you know what? The best teachers are those that always constantly question their practice and reflected on it. I was one of those teachers. I was like, okay, this was good, but how can I make it just a little bit better? And partnering with a person that I worked with in my classroom was that instructional coach for me. So I got to reflect on that. That's our best teachers that ask those questions. But we want all of our teachers asking those questions, and coaching can help. It helps, the instructional coach helps implement those new ideas that we wanted to put into place. It helps implement those high quality strategies that our teachers need to be using. And it allows for someone to co-teach and co-present right in the moment. It's that just in time intervention that some of our teachers need. If I've got a coach that's going to be able to come in and coach with me, excuse me, then I get that right now. I get to start doing that instructional strategy correct. I catch the errors before I make it a habit. And we know that our instructional practices are only as good as they are implemented. So we want to make sure that we give that support to them. So if I want to be an effective coach, here's what I got to be really good at. I got to be good paraphrasing. I have to build rapport. I got to be really great at questioning. We talked about intentional. I have to be trustworthy. So going into my teacher's classroom with that instructional coaching role, then I get to build that trust. I'm not that administrator evaluating them at this time. I'm that person that you think part. So it's beautiful. A clear picture of reality is very, very important. But something that really helps move our teachers forward is having a checklist for those practices that we want to put into place. Again, this is built on the foundation of Jim Knight's instructional coaching, and this is one of the components of the impact cycle, is having a checklist. So after I've identified what strategies I need to use, or I want my teachers to use in my classroom, then I want to make a checklist for it. And I'm sorry, here's why I want to make that checklist, because they remind us of the necessary steps it takes to make it explicit. Because we get in a habit of doing things and cutting out some steps, and the steps we cut out might be the most important part. It's that high performance that we want to see. So this is a sample checklist of using an assessment effectively. So we think, using an assessment effectively, why would we need a checklist for that? Because we want to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to move students to success. So when we are in a coaching cycle and we're coaching on assessments and how to use it, then I'm going to give my teacher this checklist. So they're going to know they need to make sure I'm going to ensure students' responses. I'm going to get that group response ritual. I'm going to read nonverbal cues. I'm going to create a mistake-friendly culture. And then I'm going to give them students that progress check. This is what I want to see happen. So I'm going to give it to her. So here's a clear picture. Here's what it needs to look like. I'm going to let her self-evaluate that. And so when I come in, she knows exactly what I'm looking for. She knows exactly what we want to see. And so it allows us to have great teaching and coaching conversations. So, but no one says it better for the need of a coach than this fellow right here. And we've seen several of his quotes and saw some, the checklist that we just looked at was from him. And he's a great inspiration for Jim Knight's impact cycle. And he wrote the book Checklist Manifesto. And I've read it and am obsessed with it, and I think that you would be too. But Otto Gondomar, let's listen to what he has to say about how to get better at eating. I chose this section to show you. If you have time, I would go back and watch it all. It's very inspiring. But I wanted you to hear someone who's really great at his craft.
There's about 2 minutes left, Kim.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. He's really good at his craft, but got better. So when we think about instructional coaches, we think, oh, well, that's just for the new people. No, a coach is for everyone because we can always improve our craft. Like I said, I've been in this gig 30 years. You know what? I can still improve my craft. So I want you to take just a few moments and just jot a thought about what he heard, what he said and what you heard. Because I love that he took a violinist and said, we don't think about them as having coaches. But a coach helped him to be the best violinist. You know, coaches are very evident in sports, but not always in other professions like teaching, like surgery, like violinist. So our time has come to a close. I would love for anyone to unmute, put something in the chat about your thoughts. This is a quick one about instructional coaching and what it can do for your school. There's so much to it that was hard to whittle it down to just 30 minutes. But if you would like to hone up on your coaching skills, or if you would like, say, I think coaching is worth bringing to my district, then let us know. Here's our email at Krista. And thank you for sharing this time with me. I hope that when you look at your budget next year, you really consider, you know what? I think we need a coach because coaches make us better. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. I am going to paste the evaluation at the bottom. Just so in the chat, if you don't get it, it is on the P3 grid page at the bottom. Please make sure you fill that out. And thank you, Kim, for a solid 30 minutes of helping us and coaching us for a few minutes.
Chad, I agree that our coaching will help your teachers be successful. I'd love to, if you want some information about the impact cycle or anything that we can help you with, please let us know and we'd love to support you. But that's how we win. We can't win if we don't know what we need to practice on. Thank you. You're exactly right. They have to have, you're so right, Charles. We have to, for it to be a true instructional coach, that person has to be non-evaluative. You can't have that evaluation in there. And I know there's those requirements that our district has on us. We have to do so many, evaluations. But there are times that we can do those evaluations. And then there's also times that we can take that hat off and we can be just instructional coaches. I can put my principal's hat on and do maybe some evaluative ones. And then I can put my coaching hat on and be just a coach. And it does make it. You're right, it does. So thank you all so much. If there's anyone that would like to unmute, Have a question, have a comment, have a concern, just let me know. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Thank you all.